Hello everybody, SeKo Beercraft here, having myself a Roscoe's Hop House India Pale Ale. It is super tasty, and casting an amateur replay. We have SpartanRD up against one of my friends down here in the bottom. It's pretty centered. Dipstick. Silver League TVT. Now I've been playing a lot of just games with Dipstick and my buddy Elmatic Dubs, helping them out a little bit with some of their different strategies. And what I've really enjoyed about watching Dipstick's play that I think a lot of people can learn from is his aggression. A lot to be desired when it comes to teching and macro and so forth. The guy makes good plans and he executes on it. So I felt this would be a really great game to go through a bit of strategy. As an amateur level TVT, people that want to use aggression to control the map. And I switched away from Zerg earlier on when I was playing away from Terran when I was playing Starcraft, because I found that they can be very defensive. They can be very turtle-ish. You can really just sit back and wait for the action to happen, and before you know it, your opponents control the whole map and they just roll you with whatever they want. This became too defensive. Maybe it's a bit of a problem because of playing too much one-player games and campaign missions for Starcraft. So I switched it up to Zerg, a race that was a bit more mobile and wanted to put pressure out on the map. Zerg, I don't think, is at that same level of effectiveness. I think they're actually one of the more vulnerable races early on in the game. And Terran has really evolved to have these opportunities to go and put pressure on and do damage. And I'm not even speaking about cheese. And I think it's really good for people to learn how to do that, because if you're pressuring your opponent, you're not the one suffering. You're not getting destroyed by somebody else's play. And I think that's very important, because then you can dictate the pace. Obviously, you need to macro well behind that, but if you can dictate the pace, you get to push your opponents into a corner. You get to push them into tech that might not be effective, and that allows you to just really control the outcomes a bit better. You can see wall off on this side from Dipstick, going into very early double gas, whereas we have double barracks on the side, single gas, but it'll be a bit of a faster orbital happening on that, and that's just the consequence of the decisions you take around that. Going double gas early on, generally, I don't think is super effective. A lot of the times, you don't need this second gas, even if you're going to go banshees, until about your factory is a quarter of the way done. That's just something people keep in mind. If you start taking gas way too early, sometimes it doesn't get done. And you always want to check to make sure something like this doesn't happen. We have one worker that's just sitting around doing nothing. And that's why in the bottom left, just above the map, most of the time you have a little icon there telling you if you have idle SCVs. Check that once in a while just to make sure things like that don't happen, because that is a lot of economy that you're missing out on if you don't have that worker in place. 2 barracks before factory should allow them to have out a lot of units here, and that's good for denying a lot of early pressure that might happen. Doesn't necessarily do a lot for you if there's a banshee coming. I mean, Marines obviously can shoot at banshees, but you don't have detection or anything else out at this stage. Tech lab going to go down. Enough Marines out to be able to deal with any type of Reaper play. And this is really nice. I don't think enough people do this. Build your supply depots on the corners of your bases. That way you'll be able to see if there's a drop, if there's something really cheeky happening. If a banshee comes over and starts shooting at the supply depot, who cares? It's much better than them shooting at your economy. And we have a 1-1-1 coming out here from Dipstick, who's become a big fan of this. The 1-1-1 is a great build to start putting on aggression very early on. And on this side we can see that it's very middle-of-the-road play by Spartan. Very defensive, lots of Marines, Widow Mine, and he's going to be able to get up that engineering bay for a detection. Keeping your head on the supply. Well, he got supply blocked for a moment there, but doing the best he can. Units wise, we can see that it's pretty even in economy, and I like that Dipstick, for the most part in the early games, is pretty good at keeping up on his worker count. It's just generally when the action starts happening that we can see people start falling behind. So we actually have banshees and tanks and cloak. That's the beauty of obviously having all this gas being taken, is you can get out a lot of tech. And that's an advantage you can have in a game, right? There's only a handful of advantages you can do. And one is, I'm going to have a better economy than somebody else. Another is, I'm going to build more attacking units and pressure. And another is, I'm going to get out a better tech situation, so that way I can deal with more things and put on more unique types of pressure. And this Cloak, Banshee, Tank, and Marine play, very, very robust, does a lot of damage, very, very effective. And a tank obviously has the opportunity to keep you pretty safe against most things that can happen. Widow mines, tons of Marines. And this is a bit of an awkward thing. I know I'm probably going to ignore a little bit of Spartan here because I'm focusing on Dipstick's play. From Spartan's point of view, when you make all these units, you really have to think about how you can use them. You've got a missile turret to deny banshees, so you don't really need all these units here. This is enough Marines that you should be thinking about getting out like a medevac, pressuring the front, just doing something to make your opponent uncomfortable. If you invest a lot into an army and you don't use it, that's very, very useless, right? You'd rather be meching, sorry, not meching, you'd rather be teching and macroing up. That'll give you a longer opportunity to be successful. Super, super defensive on this side. It's in a great spot for that. Obviously, if he got hit by some banshees, he might be in some trouble. But he does have Marines, and he always have the ability to get out a Viking or a Raven if need be. If we look at the actual scouting... Oh, then there's a scout. Well, he sees that the tanks are there, so he can't really do much about it. Barracks, command center. I'm glad he got an earlier command center. But if we look at the vision of Dipstick here, he doesn't know there's an expansion. He doesn't know anything of the strategy that's coming at him. And that's a bit of a problem, right? Using a scan to get in a little bit of vision, very useful thing to do. Spartan is going to go home. I think it'd be worthwhile to keep at least the watchtowers occupied. Because you can always run your army home or run home a marine or something. What you really want to do is understand vision. Picks off a missile turret. Pretty good missile turret positioning here. Missile turrets do a ton of damage. So he's not going to get in a lot there. If you have two banshees, it's generally going to be more effective to split them up. You want one on one side of the map and one on the other side, because it pulls the army out of the way. So you can see that a Spartan run all of his marines in here. If one of the banshees was over here, probably would have gotten a bit more damage. Now he's in vision of this missile turret, I'm pretty sure. Yes, he is. Now he's not. And just get your damage in, right? You already paid for that cloak, you paid for those banshees. Do whatever you can for damage. There's no reason not to. And he will get out of there. I mean, he didn't get a ton of damage in. 3 kills. But you got to do something to justify that cost. Lots of tanks and marines back at home now. This command center is finished. I would think that in this position you want to have maybe a tank out at the front, get that command center down, and start controlling your area. Start controlling the space in front of your base, so that way you have the opportunity to macro up even stronger. Lots of production facilities. Banshees are going to come home. You might as well save them. There's no reason to throw these away trying to do extra damage. Go home, repair them up, and use them again later. Economy-wise, we can see Dipstick's not a long ways behind, considering this opponent has had up a base longer. Tons and tons of missile turrets. It's easy to get a little bit frustrated and want to throw up tons of missile turrets. Much more worthwhile to just get missile turrets in important positions. Get yourself out a Raven and a Viking. That shuts down most Banshee play, just because of the range of those Vikings. Lots and lots of units. There's a Raven on Dipstick's side. This serves so many purposes. Seeker missiles are obviously very, very important, but you just want that detection. An army like this can get very easily shut down by a Banshee that comes out on this side. So you want to be able to have some way to be able to deal with that. Nice positioning here out of Spartan. The difficulty about this is that these things can get sniped, and we'll see if that comes into play here in the next little bit. Overall, these guys aren't too far apart. One thing I would say for somebody like Spartan who has Widow Mines up is I'd take these Widow Mines and start putting them in the chokes. Put them in these different spots. Even if the Raven comes in and sees it, more often than not, the Widow Mine will get its shot off and do its damage. So use those as scouting tools. I do it all the time. It's a lifesaver. Very, very useful. Still producing workers behind us from Dipstick. I think that's very, very important. It's very easy to forget about that when you're controlling your army. Stim's about to be finished up. More Banshees and tanks. So, really good, strong 1-1-1 opening. 5 tanks in position to the 2 on this side. And we see that Banshees just carve through tanks so fast. Great little play there. You know what? Well, he's got +1 on that side. And this is where you gotta leapfrog your tanks. Siege up a couple and start walking forward. Really big shots there. There's no medevacs in position right now for Spartan. You see, this really smart play here from Dipstick, and this is that kind of pressure that I think is really great. He's getting in a ton of damage. We can see that this Banshee almost gets killed off. He loses one of his Banshees, but he's killed off all the tanks. And that Raven once again gives him the vision. He's even got one medevac over here for his Marines. Really slick play. At this position, though, we can see he's a little hesitant. What I would do, I'm going to pause for a second. What I do in this position, you know that there's no tanks. What you have to do is start getting your damage in and start getting in, you know, the position you want. You have all these production facilities. I believe he's got them all rallied to the front. Yep. He's got them hotkeyed, number 4. And his production facility for tanks, where is that rallied? It's not rallied to the front yet, but that's alright. I mean, he can rally those things later. Keep up with producing workers. You have your command centers hotkeyed. Keep producing workers. But then start marching your tanks up. De-siege 2, move 2 forward. And just keep that pressure going. If you can get your tanks over into this spot, you're going to be able to make your opponent very, very uncomfortable. And that's what you really want to do in this position. There hasn't been enough damage out yet from Dipstick to say that he's got a big lead. But he hasn't done any economic damage yet. And that's generally what you want to go after. So we see a bit of a draw here, and this is a great spot where these tanks could be moving forward and getting in good damage. Even if you wanted to get him on the low ground here and start sniping off high ground buildings, he's got these air units to give him the vision. So I do like that he noticed one of his Marines was targeted. He forgot about the second. Big hit. So if you got these opportunities, stim your army up. You got all these Marines, go poke in. Do some damage. Hit up some missile turrets. Do something like that, right? We do have one Seeker missile coming up. See, it's really smart. Just as a tip, if you pick up things in a medevac, yes, the Seeker missile won't target it anymore, but the Seeker missile will still shoot where it was pointed. So if you picked up those people in the medevac and moved away from where it was pointed, he wouldn't have gotten any damage done. Just a little bit of tip out there for people. Tanks finally moving forward. Keep your Marines in front of your tanks. What you don't want is a bunch of Marauders or something to just stim in and take out your tanks. Those tanks are your assets, your very valuable assets. Keep your Marines, which are more of your meat shield, in the front, and that's going to allow you to obviously know when things are coming at you faster. This is such a sucky position to be in as any Terran player, where you're getting sieged up from a distance. We see the armies coming down, and this is why you want all of your Marines in the front. You see they're not shooting at the tanks because they're focused on these Marines. Seeker missile hits a missile turret, why not? Sorry. Banshee once again just being a total dick. Packing up all the important stuff. And this is where it's nice to run in a handful of Marines just into the mineral line and get that guaranteed damage in. We see the Spartan is essentially out of this game at this point. He's got another Raven finished up, but it's not doing him any good. Banshee over here, still doing some damage. These tanks in the back, de-siege them, move them up. Keep your ones in the front sieged up, so that way you can always leapfrog forward. Pretty good Seeker missile there, didn't kill anything unfortunately. The workers get pulled to do some stuff. We can see the DPS of the Marines just cuts through that. GG's out. Really slick game from Dipstick there. For Silver League, I thought that was actually played very, very well. There's obviously room for improvement, but this kind of pressure, using the Banshees to snipe the tanks, using the Marines as a meat shield, keeping the medevac here to heal up your units, keeping the Ravens in tow, just showed a really smart understanding of what he was going up against, and was able to really just crush this opponent here very, very, very easily. So I'm actually quite happy with the way he played that out. Good tips for people. I think this is a strategy a lot of people could win with. It's not the most macro-focused opening, but it really does help you put the pressure on the opponent, keep it off of yourself, and then dictate the pace of the game a lot more. And I think that's kind of the moral I would take away from this game if I was somebody that was watching this. SeKo Starcraft, Amateur Games. Thanks for tuning in. Like and subscribe because I love you, and we'll talk with you later.